Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Hello and welcome to this special series. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. This week, we will focus on India's need for regulation. In regard to cryptocurrencies, the big positive development for the sector this week is the Reserve Bank of India's circular that banks and other regulated entities cannot cite its 2018 circular on cryptocurrencies as it has been set aside by the Supreme Court in March 2020. The circular is not valid from the date of the Supreme Court order and cannot be cited or quoted from, the RBI said. Another positive development for the sector recently was a fresh panel of experts formed to study possibility of regulating crypto in India. The new committee would explore use of blockchain for technological enhancement and suggest ways to regulate crypto as digital assets instead of currency. The committee may also study ways to operationalize RBI's proposed digital rupee. To discuss this and much more, I am now joined by Ramesh Kailasam. He's President and CEO, Indiatech.org. Ramesh, hi, welcome to the show. How do you, first of all, view RBI finally putting out that old circular saying it is no longer valid and cannot be used as a reason for denial of services to the sector?
It was a much welcome clarity. In fact, the industry, you must have seen, has also welcomed this clarification. Primarily because if you look at the kind of scenario that we were all in, that there was this circular by the RBI in 2018, which was the ban order. And then subsequently, there was this Supreme Court decision, which said this order is now stands nullified. And post that, we were in a state where everybody was under the impression that, yes, this ban is no longer there. But surprisingly, in the last few weeks, many of the players in the crypto space, whether it was exchanges or whether it was people dabbling in crypto, started getting mails and kind of circulars from the banks that they were dealing with, primarily telling them that, look, there is this circular and due to which you can't be dabbling in crypto, which was a bit of a shocker for many, considering the fact that there was a clear-cut Supreme Court order. So, and therefore, all of us, including the industry, had reached out, raised noise around it, saying, how is it that a circular which has been shot down by the Supreme Court being considered as an excuse for not dabbling in crypto? And I think it was time that RBI had to step forward and set the record straight to the banks and to the people dabbling in crypto, saying that, look, post this Supreme Court order, this ban order or that circular is no longer valid, and the fact that the banks will have to do their own due diligences in this regard, considering the fact that the old circular is no longer kind of held valid for the banks to be taking cover under. It is also something which the RBI has made it amply clear that do not use that circular as an excuse. You will have to do your own due diligence if you want to allow crypto to be, I mean, for your clients, for your members, for your customers, and so on. So that has been amply made clear by this order.
Oh, well, absolutely. Ramesh, you also have been seeking regulatory clarity with due, checks and balances, as RBI also has put forth in sense of due diligence to the banks and the financial institutions. Where do we stand on that? Because I remember Supreme Court in 2019 also had said that the center should make, regulations when it comes to cryptocurrencies as well. I mean, it's been 2 and 3 years since then also.
The Supreme Court had asked the center, in fact, to frame policies for crypto in 2019, as you rightly said. The Supreme Court judgment was actually paving the way for lifting of prior restrictions that existed in this regard. Basically, as you know, the Supreme Court said there's a lack of empirical data to justify the ban. So what the government did was the government started creating a particular kind of a bill. And it also proposed the cryptocurrency regulation of official digital currency bill, which took various, the dates of the years got changed. Right now, we are sitting on what is called the Cryptocurrency and Regulation of Official Digital Currency Bill 2021, which was brought in, which is yet to, enter the parliament. Due to the pandemic, you had the last session curtailed. But that is where it was sitting. And from whatever media reports have been, it seems to be heading in the direction of restriction and ban, which is what was being talked about. So from our end, what we, as India Tech, which is a body representing founders of Indian startups and the Indian startup ecosystem, we felt that this was a sector which is important for the future, but certainly needs a lot of regulatory clarity. And therefore, what we did was we tried to come out with a white paper, not the usual white paper where you see 50, 60 pages, but something which was crisp to the point on 4 to 5 pages. And on one side, we highlighted what are the benefits that are coming out of it. But on the other side, we said, what are the checks and balances we need to have? And what we did was we brought it under the umbrella of a 5-point framework. The reason why we brought it under a 5-point framework was to make it look simpler, easily something that can be consumed by various stakeholders, including the government and regulators. And more importantly, one of the fundamental drivers was that we had actually collected inputs from a lot of people who were skeptical about crypto to say, what are those things that hold you back? What is your suspicion? Where do you see potential misuse? And we said, let's look at how can we address those points, because these are the fundamental steps that need to be addressed before we take a statesman-like position on crypto.
I want to talk about, we call it cryptocurrencies. The RBI circular has called it virtual currencies. There is this ask from your white paper also to call it a digital asset instead of currencies at all. Where are we in midst of all of this?
To look at cryptocurrency as a currency, and as a currency, the moment you give something a currency status, which means it is almost like a legal tender, it starts replacing currencies and the utility of currencies. Our point of view was that maybe cryptocurrency has not reached that stage of maturity of acceptance from not only India, but even the developed economies of the world. All of them have not looked at it as a currency. So why should we be jumping into that conclusion? And obviously, I mean, there are issues, there are risks which are there associated with it. So nobody is denying that. But it will be too early to grant it a currency status. So our take to the government and our recommendation was that fundamentally, the biggest fear you have is the word currency. Let's stop according the status of a currency to it. Let's simply call it a digital asset. A digital asset, which is simply an alternative asset class, a store of value, but not a medium of exchange or a unit of account. So what we said was that if you look at the usage patterns around the world, even mature economies have looked at it as a property, as an asset class, or as a digital asset, and the likes. And therefore, we said, okay, let's probably not look at the payment scenario that currencies tend to bring about, and look at it as an asset. And once we define it as an asset, 90% plus of the kind of security issues, my concerns that I have around it being a competing one, it can being replacing the legal tender or being a threat for future payments and all goes away for the time being. And therefore, the moment you also classify it as an asset, there are a lot of other things like taxation, tracking, trails, all of that fall in place, which we have, of course, recommended in detail in the white paper.
I also want to talk about the opportunities within the Indian market as you see. I mean, as an asset class, as investors, we've seen numbers in the Indian markets continue to grow up. I mean, I was talking to a couple of exchanges earlier in the day, and they said that $100 to $150 million worth of trade is happening on a daily basis. And the participation is just jumped up by, 40, 50% on a month-on-month basis. Of course, we've seen launches of new currencies. People see investment opportunities, profit opportunities here. What are the associated risks with that you have covered in the white paper?
In recent times, we have seen that there is a huge public kind of attraction towards it, and more so with more and more celebrities putting their weight behind it, tweeting about it. It's gone crazy. I mean, the surge has been phenomenal. And therefore, if you look at even the global user base, I mean, India is, of course, surging phenomenally well. I've been writing about it. But if you look at the global user base, I mean, there has been a 190% increase in the last 2 years alone. And the global user base has now surpassed 200 million in numbers. And if you look at the April figures, it had a all-time market cap of close to $2 trillion. And if you look at the India market alone, we have something like 1.5 crore users using it. Monthly kind of trades are in the region of 60 to 70,000 crores. So when you're dealing with such a huge market, I mean, it's important that obviously before it goes out of control and tomorrow people start misusing. I mean, any technology misuse is a common aspect of it, but the larger good shouldn't be affected by the misuse, and therefore it's important to stem the misuse early on in the game, which is why we have been pushing for the fact that genuine concerns that exist have to be brought under regulations, and that there are some fundamental areas that we have highlighted that need clarity, which the government needs clarity, the regulator needs clarity. Let's give it to them. And it's important to survive, thrive, and grow in the future rather than getting the door shut on your face.
Well, yes, the numbers have been ballooning, and it's time that the government came out with some kind of a regulation or at least a conversation with the stakeholders here. With that, we'll go for a very short break. But when we come back, we'll ask Ramesh on what the white paper really is and what are the key 5 highlights of that paper after this break.
WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Welcome back, and you're watching WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. We have with us Ramesh Kailasam, who's President and CEO, IndiaTech.org. Ramesh, I want to ask on what kind of startups, investment, tech personnel investments are we actually seeing in this space, and what kind of a growth has that seen?
If we look at this whole space, I mean, there are 2 aspects to this. One is, of course, you have the core cryptocurrency itself, and then you have blockchain. Both of them are interdependent. Both of them have evolved out of each other. And more importantly, what's the interesting part is that this is a technology of the future. If I look back at the boom we had in the IT space way back in late 90s, early 2000s, it was largely that India was beginning to get hold of the IT and ITES sectors. Now, this is a fabulous area where future experimentation, India as an economy, India as a market, which includes all the 3 tiers of that you see in a developing, developed, and fully developed economies are concerned. You get all those use cases in India. We have a fabulous positioning and an opportunity as a nation to dabble in all of that and be I'm for lack of a better word, I would say, still be the back office of the world on crypto. I mean, what it does open up is phenomenal opportunities, not only for people who are in the development space, who are in the solution architecting space, who are actually completely in the tech scheme of things, but also for people like journalists who can come out with cryptocurrency as their careers. I mean, reporting on crypto, understanding the sector, understanding blockchain, lawyers, accountants, technical people who will be employed. It's a huge opportunity where this whole ecosystem can actually push the economy a few $1 trillion up much faster than how the conventional economy would have naturally pushed it. But we can probably shorten the gap. And I keep telling that maybe instead of a $5 trillion, if we get it right on crypto and blockchain, we might be looking at a 10 trillion economy much sooner than what was envisaged.
All right. And now to the most important part of this conversation, and this is about the 5-point recommendation for the framework that you have made. If you could detail it for us, and then, of course, I'll start asking you questions on that too.
So what we did was, as I said, we did ask what are the different kinds of issues people have, and this is basically addressing those perceptions. So what we did was, we put them in 5 blocks. The 5 blocks do have certain subpoints under it. The first one, of course, as I said, was that let's stop treating crypto as a virtual currency. The moment we do that as a country, we have sorted out all the insecurities that exist in the minds of regulators and government. The second thing is, obviously, then if you're not treating it as a currency, obviously you call it as an asset. Now, how do you call this as an asset is whether you call it as a fixed asset, you can't call it because it can be easily convertible into cash. So do you call it cash? You can't. That's something we have fundamentally been against. So we call it as a crypto asset, which means that this is similar to treatment of how they would sit in your balance sheet and P&L, whether depending on the kind of person you are, whether you are one who is a trader or a person who is holding it or a corporate. Now let's look at it as a corporate. Then obviously we are saying that, and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs did insist on disclosures because 31st March happened, and then if you're holding crypto, how do you disclose it? Our recommendation has been that call it as an asset and disclose it in the balance sheet P&L, or depending on how the holder is. Now that comes in the later part, but initial part was that call it as a crypto asset and allow only Indian owned exchanges, or rather Indian founded exchanges, to operate in the initial years, so that the government has a collar to catch. And this is purely as part of the checks and balances. Obviously, it also helps nurture the Indian startup ecosystem in this space and saves billions of dollars going abroad to foreign exchanges as transaction fees. The second part is, of course, within this, we did qualify saying that let the exchanges be at least 26% Indian held, because we have taken learnings from the banking sector where our cash is entrusted with 74% FDI and 26% Indian. So we said, let us apply the same logic here. The second broad set of recommendations have come around taxability, both direct and indirect.
Okay.
And in that, what we have said is that if you look at, taxing crypto in India, we are saying that you just tax it like any other investment or an asset class, which is current in nature. So therefore, if you hold it for a longer period of time, it's a long-term capital gain. If it's a shorter period, then it's a short-term capital gain or loss, depending on how you would treat any other short-term assets. Of course, if you're a trader, then you obviously report your income under profits or gains from business or profession. In terms of transaction, we also have insisted on transaction traceability. We have asked for things like KYC. We have asked for things like compliance to anti-money laundering. We have also requested that the exchanges should be given direction that if they notice suspicious transactions, which authority should they report to? Currently, there is nothing in terms of legal clarity on if I spot something like that, who should I report to, whether it's the FIU, whether it's the finance ministry, whether it is a regulator, and so on and so forth. We've also said that accounting standards and Ministry of Corporate Affairs should instruct the accounting bodies to come out with accounting standards to basically describe on how do you value an asset and how do you disclose an asset and where all should it be disclosed. Even in terms of applicability of GST, we said that it should be applied on the fee which is levied by the exchanges and not on the total stake. I mean, we are taking learnings from what we had recommended earlier for the gaming sector, as India Tech had come out with reports on that front, where we said that it can't be the whole value; it has to be on the what the exchange charges as a fee or the revenues of the exchange. And more importantly, what we said was overall, this will not be something which can be kind of monitored by just one agency of the government. It will require the industry to also participate, and therefore, why not have the industry also set up a self-regulatory mechanism, and therefore self-regulation should be recognized. We have already got precedents from the government itself when it came out with self-regulatory guidelines for the OTT sector.
Okay.
And therefore, we said something similar to that on checks and balances, good housekeeping practices, all of those that the exchanges should follow should be put in place. And apart from that, of course, we have also recommended saying that the flow of cryptocurrency, if you look at it as crypto assets, there is a finite stock which is currently in the country. There is another amount of inventory lying abroad which people might be bringing in. Those should be subject to import regulations, because anything you get from abroad into India is currently subject to import regulations.
Right.
And apart from that, RBI is concerned about the FEMA regulations and so on. So why don't you actually clarify how much can be held, who can bring how much per year, how much of Forex you can spend on it? This will help address those concerns which RBI and banks would have. And if you look at the RBI circular, the RBI said the banks are supposed to do due diligence on all the areas. So we have actually covered all of those, like FATF guidelines,
Ramesh, you have.
And apart from all of that, the anti-money laundering and so on and so forth.
Well,
Plus,
yes.
of course, the FEMA regulations and so on.
Ramesh, I also want to ask you on what the global learnings really have been onto this one, because since you wrote the paper, there's so much that's happened globally. I mean, China cracking down, but we've seen other countries actually, start to give it its due acknowledgement also. We've seen some acceptance come in from some other countries also. So when you look at India and the kind of rise that we've seen here in case of volumes and the acceptance outside, are we looking at government taking cues from that?
Absolutely. If you look at, as a country, we are yet to capitalize fully on this opportunity. We are just scratching the surface. Globally, if you look at it, $5.5 billion has been invested in crypto and blockchain startups. Indian companies have till date not even received something like 0.2% of this whole capital. If you look at Singapore numbers in the last 6 to 8 months, they've already received something like $700+ million of investments in this sector. So by regulating, and India can actually benefit strategically. As I said, if you look at the globe around you, I mean, there are some 6 or 7 countries which are banned, which are not great countries to be taken as an example, because these are all in the developing world and not the ones which are progressively looking at it. But if you look at the countries where it is getting legal, I mean, you have the US, which is looking state after state, looking to actually regulate this. Japan has come out with regulations. The UK has come out with regulations. Germany recently, last week, has come out with its own clarifications on how even the bank should interact. The US is coming out in the budget. They have announced how they will go about kind of coordinating with the exchanges on compliances and so on. So if you look at global examples, they have not necessarily taken the banning route. Even Switzerland has embraced cryptocurrency. So we are seeing a huge amount of uptake and acceptance in the developing economy, in the developed economies, of looking and accepting crypto. So I think that is the heartwarming part. Of course, the takeaway is that they are not giving it a currency status, which is what we have also been saying, and therefore taking away the fear of the fact that this is another currency that's going to replace immediately. Neither is crypto ready as of today, and I'm just qualifying this, as of today, to replace currency, nor are the governments in the mood to give it that status. So why are we even talking of it as a currency? So therefore, regulators worldwide are still innovating. They are still coming out with checks and balances. And therefore, India is in the right position to take a similar stand, maybe come out with checks and balances which other geographies can actually even emulate. Because the detail to which we have thought through, we are seeing bits and pieces of it getting announced or implemented in other parts of the world. This could be a great opportunity for us.
It is, and there have been so many positives in the recent few times, and we seem to be taking it from both these hands, especially the sector right now. But as Ramesh also points that globally as well, there's a lot of positive news that's coming in on the regulatory aspect. We are awaiting all of that in the Indian markets right now. Ramesh Kailasam, thank you so much for joining us, and that has been a wonderful conversation.
WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.